It is Monday. RawMikeRichards.com, broadcasting from the DKI studios in downtown Toronto, 234 King Street East, out of the Pacific Junction Hotel. Back after a week, a hiatus. I was the keynote speaker in Playa del Carmen, the Mexican Riviera. It was a great time down for that convention. I'll get to some of that details in a moment. Not a bad way to spend a week, especially with those guys. If I thought I knew DKI before, I really know them now. Yep, and some of them naked. Oh, yeah. Lots going on. Including the kind of the WWE version of the NFL, where I think at one point maybe AC Green was upset that GSP won his match against Michael Bisping. UFC 217 decided he was going to do his own takedown and chokehold. What was he thinking? What was going through his mind? Especially, okay, maybe even give him the chokehold. Punching? Ever punched a guy wearing a football helmet beforehand? Especially when you use your hands for a living? That's good thinking right there. And Jameis Winston, he's not bragging either. Also, we're going to talk to Showdown Joe Ferraro.
Good to have him back.
Yeah, he's an awesome guy. And we'll go over what I think was probably, look, of the money that I've blown in my lifetime, let's face it, that Dave, that's a lot of money. I've burned a lot of cash. But the $59 or whatever it was to get UFC 217. So
you got the HD version of the fight?
Oh, it was great. Yeah, it was.
It's so stupid when you order those things. It's like you could order the standard def for $49 or the HD for $59.
Yeah.
And people are sitting there going, oh, $10, eh? Where am I going to go?
Or for the extra, in color. In color. You need the color because there was a lot of red. And I will say this, GSP, and we'll get to it, but what a performance. The guy comes back after think about being out of any vocation. Accountant. Maybe the adding's not as good. Maybe the division or whatever.
Sharp, yeah.
Not as good, Dave.
2 and 2 is now 5 after 4 years.
Like, damn it. I forgot adding.
Let's start this again.
But GSP comes out, he looked big. Like physically, that's the biggest I've ever seen him. So, again, we'll talk about UFC 217. Also, on the weekend, as I came back, I was very excited about gambling, so I started making my bets. And I needed our good luck charm, Lisa Varga. If it was the Notre Dame Irish, I mean, that's kind of what I needed to have happen. So it was all over the internet, and she was my good luck charm. And Wake Forest got the brutal backdoor cover. Like, that's the worst way to lose. And they're a garbage team, too. So Notre Dame, congratulations if you see yourself as a playoff team. And that is, as you know, only 4 teams get in. And coughing up 38 points of what it was to Wake Forest, that's pathetic.
Because they had, like when I was watching the score in the first half, Notre Dame had at least a 17-point lead, didn't they?
Yeah, and they did, and then they coughed up like 3 touchdowns in a row in the fourth quarter. I'm like, are you kidding me? And that's what happened. So people said, what's going on with you and Lisa Varga? I said, well, I think it's our first fight. I don't mind saying that. And then someone tweeted out this thing where on the internet she was voted best-looking woman in the world, which, by the way, not wrong.
There's a contest?
Yeah, apparently there was a contest. So, look, here's what I'll do. I'm going to find the appropriate music. And by the way, Lisa Varga, who's an actress, currently lives in South Bend, Indiana. So, obviously, that's where you're going to find Notre Dame love, and we all love the Lisa Varga. She also showed up in Homeland. How good was that show?
Mm-hmm.
And she has a bunch of projects now. She's currently working on a movie she actually directed. But I needed her as my good luck charm. Minus 13.5, which I didn't think was a problem. So as I was pondering our relationship, pretty sure she's my fiance. Then someone said, well, it's a good choice because get a load of this from the internet. What to say, Rusty? It says she is, because I can't see it. Okay, don't worry about it. It just says basically she was voted the best-looking woman in the world. Wish she was a little luckier with the minus 13.5, but that's between her and I. She has been a long-time fan of ours. We're certainly a fan of hers. She's been on her show, and as you're looking at the pictures right now, we salute you. There she is right there. Lisa Varga, right there. Well done.
That's something.
Yeah, isn't that nice?
What was the...
Russell, don't be doing that. No, Russell.
What was the was there a panel, or was this a televised contest, or?
I must have missed that. It must have been.
I totally never heard about it, but I mean, hey, it looks legit to me.
Well, if you're gonna pick a winner,
yeah,
that's pretty good. The winners on the weekend, Dave. If we're gonna take a look at, where are we gonna go here? Let's. Oh, by the way,
yes,
so let's start with just some of the shenanigans. Let's start with something that A.J. Green thought was going to be decent in that game against the Jaguars. So I guess he thought he was being pushed, or what is the genesis of why he was so mad? Because first of all, he chokes him. So let's show the...
yes.
You don't see this often in football, by the way. I don't know the last time I saw a takedown. Full on from behind. Literally a very GSP-like move with the choke, followed by, which I thought was the even stranger, throwing punches while the guy's on the ground. Sort of like the ground and pound, except the other guy at this point is wearing a football helmet.
Which usually means don't do that, stupid.
Don't do that.
Yeah. Don't do what Donnie don't does. That's what A.J. Green should have been thinking.
That's what he should have been thinking.
But he wasn't thinking.
Cincinnati's a stupid team, though.
They are.
They're a stupid team, Dave.
It's honestly, this reminds me of the Bengals teams of about 5-6 years ago, where they had that thing on the inmates are clearly running the asylum. Welcome back, Cincinnati, because man, you just a garbage team, garbage franchise. Doesn't seem to be any leadership on that core at all, and got blasted by the Jaguars. Now, the Jaguars aren't your father's Jaguars of past years, where this team actually looks legit.
They can play.
And even suspending their best player for the game just hour before the actual game, where Leonard Fournette gets pulled from the active duty, which is basically telling you, this is how we're going to run our team, and we're not going to put up with crap. Where they were playing a team where anything goes, boys. Go out there and have at her. The Cincinnati Bengals are one of the most disappointing teams in the entire league this year.
I agree. I think they're just
this just is a sample of it, Mike. You know what I mean? It's
well, and for Marvin Lewis, and you know, there are times where you think people should probably be afraid for their jobs. And I think he is a good coach. I think as a human being, he's obviously a pretty good guy. But honestly, Dave, when you start getting stuff like this, I start to become a little concerned about you having control of the actual dressing room. Because at this point, when I see crap like that, teams that can't win in the playoffs, I mean, you're looking now at a team that, who gives a rat's ass what they do in the regular season?
Bingo.
You've got an Andy Dalton who sometimes you just don't have the fullest belief. Like, how do you think he will win you a Super Bowl trophy?
No.
And at this point, I just don't. I don't see how you can say that.
No, not at all. Andy Dalton is a serviceable starting quarterback in the NFL at times, and I think that's what it's going to say on his plaque when he's finished.
Yeah.
And they put his trophy outside of Paul Brown Stadium. Serviceable quarterback that was decent at times.
At times.
At times.
Well, looking at the rest of the NFL, Dave. Yes, I'll use that voice. The autumn wind is a pirate. Okay.
And they look good on Sunday night, too.
Wow.
Got the big win.
Finally, okay, can we say that they've whatever that horrible start was, and obviously an injury to Derek Carr, are they back?
You know what? I'm gonna say they've put themselves in the conversation for a wild card, even though they're still sub 500 right now, Mike. So you look at that and you go, okay, Oakland on the road is never a great bet. 1-3 on the season entering the game. They win in Miami, which was great for them. And considering their travel schedule as of late has been horrendously bad, so it's nice that they're actually gaining on a Kansas City team that faded in Dallas last night.
Yes, they did.
So it really made up for it. It was almost one of those two-game swings that went in the favor of Oakland. And my NFL, even though I'm not an Oakland Raiders fan, my NFL has the Raiders as a good team, and this league is much better when teams like this actually do well. I think they're going to make the playoffs.
Is it possible that we're seeing actually stronger teams in the AFC than the NFC? Or sorry, the other way around. The NFC is leading, the AFC is the weakest.
It's funny you say that, because I was thinking about that yesterday, and it's like, I don't know if it's a switch over or it's a little bit of a change.
Feels that way.
But it feels that way. And you know, especially when you see Kansas City was, you know, arguably the power of the conference, or at least a top two power of the conference, go to an average to above average Dallas team and basically got licked.
Yeah, they did.
You know,
Dallas looked good.
I know the score wasn't like destroying, you know, a 28-17. That's not a bad score, but Dallas dominated that game and controlled that game. And you know what? Maybe power is starting to change, and we're seeing a little more parity between the two conferences.
Well, if you're starting to look at really what, if you want to talk power, so if we're looking at our Power 10, or if you're looking for, I guess, our take on the standings,
yep,
and who is, you know, in that top 10, I think I'm starting with Philadelphia. I'm starting to think right now that Philadelphia has pretty much, including defense, everything it takes to potentially win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think so too. And don't be surprised if they are the conference representative at this year's Super Bowl. They have everything in place. The Jay trade looks like it's going to work out. He played well in his first game after a couple days of practice with his new team. So they have that guy in place. They still have backups at that position. They have a young quarterback that is arguably a top 2 or 3 candidate for an MVP this season.
Boy, he does everything right, too. Not only do I like the way he reads defenses, which to me is the number one thing if you want to be successful at that level of quarterback. It doesn't matter how athletic you are, or your arm, or you can run. You need to be able to recognize different things that are happening on the other side of the ball. And he does it like a veteran.
Yep.
The only thing that, again, I kind of worry about at times, because he is actually a total football player, he's got to make sure that he doesn't want to take on too many guys. If he does get out of the pocket, I like to see him be a little more safe. But he plays how he plays, and right now, I love how he plays.
Yeah, North Dakota State, who would have thought a guy out of there would actually do as well as he's doing in the NFL? And we're starting to see a little bit of a transformation of some newer, younger quarterback. Jared Goff could almost be said the same sort of thing, maybe not to the level of Wentz right now, but he's leading a very good Rams attack. I love watching the Rams. I really do.
So do I.
And
because that's the second team that I would mention in this conversation.
Correct.
I don't know if I'm putting definitely number 1, number 2, but of those that have played consistent football, those teams that make almost what I like to say sports math. So their head coach was a former offensive coordinator, you know, former. So on the offensive side of the ball, he gets together with a kid who had a kind of a tough rookie season.
Sure he did.
But they didn't throw it out, and I'm glad to see them stick with the program. Jared Goff out of Cal, and I'm not even sure how great really his senior season was. But he had all the potential because of, quite honestly, the prototype of what you want to see in a quarterback like that. Height, you know, arm strength, and again, his ability to have composure, and he does. He has. I don't know if you saw that conversation he had with Terry Bradshaw, but that was kind of interesting. But he is a winner, I think, deep down, and they've got themselves a winner. And the Rams right now, they are rolling.
Rams are rolling. They have a nice offensive attack. They have one of the best running backs in football, and they have a nonstop defense that shuts teams down for the most part. So I look for the Rams to not only win that division, but actually do some damage in the postseason. I don't know how far they go, but if you were to sit there and tell me right now on, November 6th, that expect a Rams-Eagles conference final, I'd sign off on that and say, yeah, I could see that reality happening, because I think they might even be good enough to be the 1 and 2 seeds in that conference. And I knew the Saints or somebody from that South Division is going to probably have something to say about it, but I'm not expecting much from the North Division, where the Packers don't have their starter, and then you're not sure about who's ever going to play quarterback for the Vikings, what Lions team is going to show up. I don't think that's a factor, and that's it. So you have the Eagles on one side, you have the Rams on the other side, and we'll see what happens in that very tough NFC.
Teams that have had seasons that have just tanked beyond their dreams. Maybe there were certain aspirations. And I'm not putting the Green Bay Packers on there, because we know exactly why the Packers aren't going to make it. It's a pretty easy one. But I'm looking at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and on almost every level that I can think of.
That might be number one.
It might be number one, Dave, because I think they've failed themselves on every level. And Jameis Winston yesterday, I don't know what was going through his head, but anytime I think that a player who plays that sport thinks it's okay to walk onto the field, poke a guy, he wasn't pointing his helmet, he poked him in the back of the neck. So now you start wondering, wait a minute, are these the maturity issues that we saw before at Florida State?
There was red flags,
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I also think the coaching staff haven't really helped themselves. Now, granted, they've had some injuries on defense. I get that. It's sometimes tough to recuperate from certain players being out. I always hear, well, you can't blame failure on injuries. Yeah, you can. Because if you're Green Bay, I'm just pointing to one guy and saying, you take him out of our starting rotation, our starting lineup, we're done.
Yeah.
We're finished.
That's the reason.
But you know what? There's a lot of reasons in Tampa Bay, and they're mostly just take a look in the mirror.
Yeah, tons of Tampa Bay. We talked earlier about Cincinnati. I think they joined that list. Maybe not to that same extent, because I didn't think Cincinnati would win a division, but I thought Cincinnati would at least compete for a playoff spot. And you know who else would I throw in there, even though they're sitting at 500? We're seeing a different style of Atlanta Falcon team. We're seeing a team that can't compete in the fourth quarter, that isn't shutting things down. And I know people are probably laughing out there. Can't compete in the second half of games, eh? Where does that go back to? Well, I'm not only talking about that. I'm talking about this season where they start off to a nice lead against Carolina. It looks like everything's going in the direction, and then all of a sudden they allow a touchdown, they allow a field goal, they allow a movement of the ball. They can't move it on offense, and they end up losing a game within the division to a team that they're supposed to beat. The Falcons are better than a 500 team with the talent that is on that field, and they're not showing it right now, so I'd put them in the category of disappointment. I'd also throw in the category of disappointment if you want to talk about opportunities that they've blown in the past, and yesterday was another example of it. The Seattle Seahawks scored 2 points in the first half at home against a Washington Redskin team that traveled across the continent.
That's garbage, Dave.
That makes no sense.
No, it's just. I look. There were certain games I stayed away from yesterday. There were 2 games when my son says, "What do you like?" I said, "Okay, this week I know there's 2 games that I like in the NFL for sure. That is Philadelphia, and that's the Rams. They'll have no problem covering any of those points. If I had to go number 3, which I did, I liked Oakland. You got 2.5 points. I thought, you're going to give me 2.5 points? I like that. Then you get into the circus that is the NFL this year because of the middle ground. Seattle scares the shit out of me. Anytime I see Arizona, you don't know who's going to – do they win? Do they cover? Do they even show up? You just have no idea what's going to happen. And, Cincinnati, Atlanta, Julio Jones drops a ball on a key for –
with nobody around him.
That never happens.
Yeah. And the guy, that guy caught 120 yards worth of passing. And if you had that miss, that's another 25, 35 yards plus the touchdown, plus a different mindset of that Falcons offense that was struggling to put up points. But a guy like that, I never would have guessed, let alone a secondary or a third-tier receiver dropping that. But Julio Jones, an all-pro of all pros.
That's when you know that it's going wrong. And by the way, wives, you don't have to say this anymore, or girlfriends. Maybe you got a good one. Maybe this doesn't happen. Asking about why we get so angry watching the television, watching football, and why we have to swear so much. Don't ask that anymore. Like, if you've asked it before, or let's say you've asked it before for like 1,000 times, don't go for 1,017. It's not swearing. Other guys probably don't watch TV and swear. No, I got news for you. We all do. We all do. That's why this guy's an FNS, and this guy sucks, and I hate you. I yell at things like, I hope your plane crashes on the way home. I hope you get leprosy. Leprosy. That's what I say sometimes.
That's throwback.
Yeah. I'm going old school on that one.
I was gonna say.
Go to a leper colony. Leper? Where do you even find a leper colony?
There's not too many of those cases going around right now.
Eat a bag of Ebola. They're like, boy, you're really mad. Yeah. Cover a spread once in a while. But that is, anyway, the NFL to a degree. As I said, I just think it still is a bunch of middle ground. The Giants. Like, what is it? What would it really mean to seriously fire McAdoo? Like, what?
Yeah.
So who's coming in, and what does he inherit?
Exactly.
Garbage.
Well, what the Giants are doing is kind of what I thought the Jets were going to be doing. They're not playing very well. They're not competitive. They're an aging team. And what's going to happen is they're going to get one of those quarterback studs to replace the old dog they have at that position. He's had a nice career. He's won them a couple Super Bowls, and be it what it was, a lot of people didn't think that would happen. But guess what? He's put trophies in your case, and now it's time for him to, skedaddle and move on to the next generation of Giants quarterbacks.
Because they're a disaster as well. And look, that Colts-Texans game.
That was terrible to watch, too, especially if you're on the Texans.
Well, terrible to watch simply because we know how bad the Colts are without their star quarterback. The news of Deshaun Watson getting was it torn ACL? And it wasn't so it's just the ACL and the MCL, from what I understand.
It's still a significant injury, though.
It's season.
Yeah, it's an 8-month rehab plus
everything
that goes with it. Yeah, he'll be back hopefully in full working order by camp of next year.
It's a shame because what a season he was having. He was everything, and they had hoped for him.
Exciting as hell, too.
Because we don't have a lot of excitement in the NFL when we're watching games.
One of those new young quarterbacks that I was just kind of telling you about when we talk about Goff and Wentz. And put Watson in that category.
And even maybe Derek Carr is now considered a veteran, but still in the newer of the names. Derek Carr's on that list.
Yeah, and he'll be around for the next 10 years. So, yeah, he's going to be one of those guys where it's like, oh, it's the Raiders. They got this guy. They're going to be good.
And it's just a shame that that has happened. So I think those that are in panic mode, see, if we're taking a look at the NFL, who's in panic mode? Well, the 49ers are trying to do anything they can to survive. And they're just a project. They're a team in transition. How long that takes, I don't know. What about the Dolphins? I can't figure out what they do or who they are. I don't get what they do down there.
The thing that bothers me about the Dolphins is they thought they had a guy that was going to come in and replace an injured quarterback and even supplant that injured quarterback as far as level of talent. He's working with a coach that he's worked with in the past in Adam Gase, and it hasn't been the scenario at all. Like, maybe Jay Cutler just should have stuck to broadcasting because he doesn't look like he's all that interested in running a Dolphins offense. And the Dolphins, by trading away a starting running back where apparently there were problems in the dressing room, you look at that and you go, well, how important is this season to a team that was over 500 and looked like they were going to be hopefully tripping into a wild card spot? Because they're not going to win the division when the Patriots are in that division, but it's disappointing to be a Dolphin fan, but it's probably been that way for many seasons, being a Dolphin fan in general.
If you don't have the NFL ticket, a lot of people don't. A lot of people aren't allowed. Not allowed. Here's Ted. Goes, hate that CTV/TSN show all the same game across Canada. Said I couldn't watch my Saints yesterday. Who dat?
Who dat?
I don't even get how they do that. You go to watch like a hockey game, and it's like, Winnipeg at Ottawa. I'm like, ooh, Winnipeg at Ottawa.
Blacked out.
Blacked out. Yeah. Why is it blacked out? I'm in Toronto. I'm honestly not going to the game.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's what you're worried about, I've never understood that part.
I'm not taking away any money from the gate at Ottawa or at Winnipeg because
but they do that all the time.
They do that all the time. Yeah.
Due to restrictions, a blackout in your area.
Brutal. No, I know.
I don't get that. NFL ticket would be great. Oh, by the way, we didn't mention the game coming up, which I kind of like Detroit in this one.
It's sitting under a field goal. I'd like Detroit.
Yeah, I'd like Detroit too.
This is a much different Green Bay Packer team without the league MVP basically at the quarterback position. It's not It's not the cold, uncomfortable confines of Lambeau Field because it's still early November. This isn't a December or January game, so you don't have to worry about that side of it. And you know what? If the Lions are going to make any sort of impression on this division where it looks like it's wide open right now, maybe the Vikings are the slight favorite in that division. The Lions should be right there in that conversation, so they have to win this game, Mike, if they're going to do anything in the North.
Now, because we were away,
yes,
and we were not available to be on the air, the World Series, which was a real circus,
yes,
in a lot of ways,
and a very, very good one. That's an instant classic.
But in Game 7 for the Dodgers, why you Darvish?
Great question.
Like it.
Especially considering he got lit up 4 days earlier. Yeah. Like lit up.
It's Game 7, so there's no more series after today, fellas. So, Clayton, are you feeling okay? Oh, 3 days rest. But no.
That should have been an easy decision.
I just said, are you feeling good?
Wow. I didn't know you could translate like that.
I'm doing everything
That's
today.
That's really good.
You. Alexon Alexov. You are a shit baseball player.
Yes. He absolutely
like
is.
I'm going. I'm not good at this sport anymore.
No.
I don't get it.
No.
I seriously don't get that. That, by the way, that was traditional music I was playing there.
Oh.
Out of respect.
Wow. You.
I certainly showed that.
Well, when you look at the scale of where you kind of fit in, respect is one of your top things that you try to portray.
Mike Respect Richards?
Well,
so what do they say?
You know what? It's something you've lived by for a while.
Yeah.
Now.
That's the code I live by.
Not like you're going to change all of a sudden.
No,
right?
no. I would never do that. I'm very consistent.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to attempt here on the magic of Skype, as I typed it in freshly, Joe Ferraro, who, of course, otherwise known as Showdown Joe, talking about UFC 217 here this morning. And as we look at what was an incredible night of entertainment courtesy of UFC. Joe said he's doing his hair for this.
Speaking.
Buongiorno. Buongiorno, come va? You're on rawmike.richards.com. We are live, so if you want to start throwing some bombs.
What's up, Joe?
Yeah, who knows what's going to happen with Joe Ferraro. Showdown Joe.
What's up, guys?
That was the best money I ever spent on fights ever. And I look at all the, even going back to the Golden Boy and Oscar de la Hoya, all the fights, and I think that was the best $59.95 I ever spent. Those fights were so crazy, but from your perspective, you're the professional in that field. I'm looking at even the undercards. What did you think of that night?
Yeah, that was one of those cards that are like lightning in a bottle. Once every so often, you get a pay-per-view that is actually worth every single penny you spent on it, and that pay-per-view was absolutely fantastic. I'm usually, on my own podcast, we basically kind of rate the various shows, whether it's a fight night show or a pay-per-view. We kind of give A-pluses and C's and whatnot. That was a pure A-plus show. I don't remember a card like that for a very, very long time. So kudos to all those fighters that stepped into that octagon and put on a massive performance. It was amazing.
Now, before we get to the GSP match, if you're looking at the other fights, anything? Well, I wouldn't say anything that stuck out because it all did. The decision was the Wonder Boy. That one didn't really engage me that much. But I think Dillashaw, looking at TJ and Cody, there was a lot of hatred in that. You figure the history because of, to me, it reminded me of if you left the gang and you went to another rival gang. I assume that's how these guys felt about each other.
Oh, yeah. That fight there was all just pure ego, heart, training for each other. They trained with each other, training against each other. That was a fight that early on this year was the one fight I was looking forward to the most in 2017 because the fact that Cody Garbrandt surprised everyone when he defeated Dominic Cruz to win the title last December. We knew the matchup with TJ Dillashaw was going to happen. Unfortunately, they did it via the Ultimate Fighter to try and promote it, and then Cody had the back injury and surgery and whatnot, so it got delayed. But it was the one fight in 2017, bigger than the George St. Pierre Michael Bisping fight, that I was looking forward to the most, and it lived up. It was only 2 rounds, but my goodness, those guys threw bombs at each other, sort of threw technique out the window. It was technical per se, but that was definitely the fight I was looking forward to in 2017. But the one fight that stood out the most for me by far was Rose Namajunas defeating
Wow.
Joanna Jędrzejczyk. She had no shot. She had no chance, zero chance of winning that fight pretty much, and shocked the world, considering all the stuff that Joanna does to get into her opponent's heads, talks all that trash, tries to get in there mentally, and Rose just took it in stride. Talked a lot about her mental health issues, always trying to raise awareness for mental health because she's had a variety of demons to deal with. And, I mean, that weigh-in, the ceremonial weigh-in where Joanna was basically ripping into her, just the boogie woman is coming to get you, and Rose just looking at her dead face and just, the Lord's Prayer, Our Father who art in heaven, and to do what she did in the octagon just was an unbelievable performance.
Yeah, it certainly was. Hey, Joe, great talking to you this morning. When you look at that GSP fight, and Mike was kind of talking about how we'd like to break it down a little bit. When you saw GSP on top of Bisping, and it looked like a combination of fist elbow, about 18 of them, are you surprised the fight wasn't called before the actual choke happened just seconds later?
No, I'm not surprised. I'll tell you why, David. Michael Bisping's a champion. Michael Bisping's been around for a long time. Big John McCarthy, best referee. He's the one that created refereeing in pretty much the unified rules of mixed martial arts. He will always give benefit of the doubt to the champion. Now, remember, before that, Michael Bisping was, he had George St. Pierre in his guard, and he split him open with those elbows. So John's paying attention to that. And the one thing that John will always, I've been certified under John for quite some time. The one thing he always does, and he tells referees all the time, get in there and take a look at the opponent's eye, or take a look at the fighter that's defending, look into his eyes. Is he defending himself? Because there's going to be times when he has to hold on to try and get his wits about him. And Michael was doing that, but George was landing those bombs to the point where Michael still was able to push him off. George moved the legs over, got his back, locked in the choke. At that point there, Michael wasn't defending. You have to defend the top arm to bring it down, to alleviate the pressure on your neck before you start protecting your neck at the same time. Wasn't able to do it, fight over.
We're in conversation with Joe Ferraro, Showdown Joe, here on rawmike.richards.com. Also, make sure you watch on the dedicated YouTube channel and subscribe. And looking at that fight, the moment that George walked out there, and he did. He walked out there. There was a lot of poise. There was a lot of calm for a guy who's missed 4 years. But he also, Joe, I've personally have never seen him that big. He was carrying some pretty significant mass for him. And you know what? It just really didn't seem to bother him. And if you didn't know any better and you were sort of a third-party observer who had, sort of no skin in the game or wasn't familiar even with the event, if you looked from the very beginning, who did you really think the champion was?
Yeah, no, very true, very true. I noticed a difference with George. I noticed he was a little bit slower. His head movement wasn't really there. His speed, and again, let's be honest, guys, 4 years away from the game, it's going to take some time. But he looked a little, I wouldn't say awkward, but a little slower, because that's a lot more muscle to be carrying on a frame that he's used to cutting down to 170 pounds. Didn't really have to cut too much to get up to 185 pounds. So to me, as an observer who's known George since he was, 21 years old, I guess, I was like, ooh, that's a lot of weight to be carrying. But, against Michael Bisping, you got to be smart. You got to be, cerebral as always. But it did look a little awkward to me. But he's shown, man. He did very, very well. My concern was, he was getting split up in round number 2. Yeah. At the same time, he was slowing down. I thought to myself, my goodness, this could be a 25-minute fight, because unless you hurt Michael Bisping and put him in a position to really defend himself, Michael Bisping will keep coming at you for 25 minutes strong. So there was a concern for me as I was watching that second round unfold. Lo and behold, he lands that one hook, that left hook there, drops Michael, lights out, game over. So I was a little concerned, Mike, not going to lie to you as well, Dave.
Yeah.
I was worried for George the whole time heading into this fight, watching it unfold the way it did in the second round. I was kind of sitting there going, oh, boy, this is not going to look good for George, but he always has a way of surprising us.
Yeah, he certainly does, and he did in that fight Saturday night at MSG. So everybody's talking about what's next, because this was such a fantastic show, this display for GSP, and they want to know what's next. So the rumors are it's the Chosen One coming up next. Does that make the most sense for GSP to fight a Tyrone Woodley, or would you like to see something else? And obviously, this probably isn't going to happen anything earlier than spring of 2018, I would guess.
Well, I paid very close attention to the post-fight interview with George. All right. So leading up to the fight, he made it crystal clear that in the contract, it is written there that he has to defend the middleweight title against the current interim champ, Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker was
Right.
there in attendance, smiling ear to ear, knowing that, the opportunity to fight George St. Pierre, massive payday. But in the post-fight interview with Joe Rogan, George never addressed that. George said it's, greatest day of his life, biggest win of his career, yada, 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 dream come true, never answered the question as to what's next, what is he going to do. And I've maintained for a very long time that if George does win this title, it's more to me, not just money, it's a legacy fight. The fact that now he's one of 4 people ever in the UFC to win belts in 2 different weight classes. He joins Conor McGregor, Randy Couture, and BJ Penn. Will he want to defend against Robert Whittaker? Well, I don't want to see that fight. I think Robert Whittaker hurts George St. Pierre big time. I don't know if he wants to do that. Do I see him wanting to cut down to 170 pounds? Well, that's where he was the champion for the longest time. Tyron Woodley would love that fight as well. Huge payday for him. But if George is looking for a payday, one fight that's going to say, you know what, I'm done, a legacy fight, a true legacy fight, can he cut down to 155 pounds? Because if he can, if he's able to do it,
No, don't.
if he's given the opportunity, it's Conor McGregor.
No.
I've been
I can't.
saying it for 6 months plus, man.
I'm afraid of that fight simply because I am torn. I like both guys. I don't really see it.
Welcome to my world, Mike.
Oh, that's
Welcome to my
brutal.
world.
That would be terrible. Oh,
Yeah,
but that is going to be. I mean, because you pick the venue, it gets filled, and I would assume at some point that Conor probably wants to fight in Dublin. Is it a stadium? I mean, you have a Viva Stadium where they play soccer. Now, someone said, "What about Croke Park?" Well, only about Croke Park, and those who know over in Ireland, that's a GAA venue. That's the Gaelic Athletic Association. So that's where you're playing. Your hurling, your beautiful hurling, Gaelic football. Do you know that, you Italian bastard? You heard of that one?
Yes, I have.
Well, but I can't see them having that on those hallowed grounds. I just don't know. But when you start talking, when you start throwing words around like legacy, well, then you're talking about sort of, well, what can outdo or what is the biggest of all time? What is a Thrilla in Manila? Like, what are those kinds of venues? Well, then maybe you are talking, the 80, 90,000 people or whatever it would be. But you know what? I'd be torn, Joe. I don't know what I'd do if those two fought.
For months, what I've been saying, and we've tried to express the word, because now people are finally, you look at all the different other MMA websites, they're finally jumping on board with this George St. Pierre, Conor McGregor fight. We've been talking about it for 6 months plus, and one of the reasons why I brought it up is people keep forgetting, people that have been around the game for a long time, that know Dana White, that understand how Dana White thinks and the importance of, he was trying to get the sport regulated in all 50 states in the U.S. He wanted to get New York State. It was the final one. He wanted big fights at Madison Square Garden. But the one thing he constantly says that people keep forgetting and that they just don't pay attention to it is that relationship with Jerry Jones. They want something to get done at Dallas Cowboys Stadium.
Yeah.
George St. Pierre, Conor McGregor will fill that stadium. It will be the biggest fight, in my opinion, of all time. I know it's something that gets thrown around all the time when it comes to UFC stuff. But McGregor, St. Pierre, Dallas Cowboys Stadium, guaranteed will be sold out. Well, I shouldn't say guaranteed. Very good chance to be sold out. It would be absolutely huge. And we talk about legacy, Mike. George wins that title, the first ever to win belts in 3 different weight classes. Walk away from the sport, probably makes $100 million. See you later.
I'd go to that fight. I would pay money to go to that fight in Dallas. And I like Dallas anyways because I get really dirty when I go to Dallas. But I would go to Dallas and definitely watch that. I'd be so torn because they're both two of they're my guys. It would be almost nightmarish to see how that would turn out. Now, was he 188 on Saturday? What was the weight that George was carrying?
He weighed 184.6 if I'm not mistaken. So come Saturday night, he was probably close to about 200 pounds.
It was close. So he'd have to drop 155.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Like, can he hold the the power behind what he needs to do? Because I guess to a degree, what does that match up for Conor McGregor? I mean, he's going to see a guy who's probably considered to be maybe the best wrestler in that sport of all time. What does Conor see that would be problems? Like, if that event happens, what do you immediately see as the trouble for each guy?
Well, immediately for George St. Pierre is Conor's speed. He's a southpaw. He's younger. He's going to be much faster than George St. Pierre. George would have to scientifically be able to slowly get that muscle off while still keeping muscle, getting rid of the big water-based muscles and slowly starting trimming down to get down to be able to cut to 155 pounds. I mean, even him in his camp, even Faraz Zahabi, his head coach, has said he can make 155. It just takes time. You can't sit there and all of a sudden, because George has also stated he doesn't ever want to make the same mistake that Roy Jones Jr. made, which was to go up and down, up in weight, down in weight, because that was basically spelled the end of Roy Jones Jr.'s career. So George, being a scientific guy as he is, paid very close attention to that. But with time, if you can build something like that with time and the body can start beginning to shrink again, because George's frame naturally, in my opinion, he will walk around about 190, 193 pounds. Can he make 155 if his walk-around weight is 193 pounds? It'd be difficult. He could probably do it. So that's the first thing there. The weight, there's also the age issue. Youth factor goes to Conor McGregor. For Conor, what would he have to worry about with George St. Pierre? I don't think he'd worry too much about George's striking. It's just the explosive nature. George would be much faster, likely competing at 155 pounds than he was at 185 pounds versus Michael Bisping. So the takedowns are always going to be there. Now, George St. Pierre taking down Michael Bisping and being able to hold down Michael Bisping was a challenge because he's a much bigger fighter than George has ever competed against. George taking Conor McGregor down and holding him down, technically speaking, would be easier. I know it's superficial, but it would be easier. Right. Conor does have the skills to get up, use the cage and stuff like that, depending on where the takedown takes place and where they end up on the mat. So it is one of those very, very simple. George gets that fight down on the ground. He will do his best to control Conor McGregor and make him pay the way he made Michael Bisping pay or all his other opponents. For Conor McGregor, keep the fight standing up, use that incredible speed, that southpaw, and that incredible power that is extremely underrated when it comes to him tagging people.
Do you think that Bisping was a little not intimidated, but in the back of his mind because of previous experience where George could pretty much take him down at will when he wanted to? Did that play into that fight, do you think?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. I think Mike knew exactly what he was getting into. They brought in a lot of really good wrestlers in that training camp. I actually spoke with his trainer, Jason Perillo, earlier this week, or last week, I guess, in terms of who they brought in. So they knew. They know George St. Pierre, and he was mocking him throughout all the different press conferences and whether on the phone or in person. They said, look, I know what George is going to do. He's going to take me down. I'm just going to get right back up. He's going to take me down and get right back up. So you can actually see one of the beautiful things, technically speaking, that Michael Bisping did in that fight was nullify what George St. Pierre does very, very, very well. He's in somebody's guard, and he's able to trap the right leg with his right arm. And as he does that, when he pushes down guys, he snaps his right leg over, so he goes from guard to half guard. So he's able to just pass that. Michael was able to nullify that 3 or 4 times. Every time George tried, Michael had the answer. So I think Michael was ready. He was ready for the takedowns. He was ready to get the fight back up. He was ready to deal with anything that George St. Pierre did. And as we saw with George's posture when he was in the guard, when George leaned down too low, Michael controlled the head with his left palm and was just slicing him with the elbow. That's what you do when someone is too high or has their weight too far forward. You make them pay with the elbow. And I think a lot of people are going to learn from that. A lot of fighters are going to learn from that technique and use it more often in mixed martial arts because it works very, very well. It's legal. You're allowed to hit somebody with your elbow in guard. So if the guy wants to take me down and punish me that way, I'm going to punish him back. So in those exchanges, it was actually Michael. It was Michael Bisping that was winning the ground battle on his back and not George St. Pierre. This, again, was before George actually knocked him down and made him pay afterwards. So in terms of Michael himself, I think he was more than ready for what George was bringing in terms of the wrestling game.
Well, UFC 217 was a fantastic night of entertainment. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. I think some people would see, George's face all covered in blood and probably vomit. The fact is, you knew that he wasn't over. I mean, it was just, to me, it was about, my concern was his eyesight. As it dripped into his eyes, like how that going to affect him. But that was a heroic performance. He was so humble and so quintessential George during the post-fight with Joe Rogan, where I know he didn't want to swear, but he kind of did. It was very funny. But boy, he's class all the way. And I gotta admit, that was one of my really, truly enjoyable nights. Myself and my son watching that pay-per-view. And what comes next for some of these fighters, I guess, remains to be seen. Even for Joanna Jędrzejczyk, like what does she do now? Because she was crushed. She was crying. She was devastated.
Yeah, I mean, Johanna's that we were talking about that on the post-fight podcast, trying to figure out exactly. Oh, by the way, with George St. Pierre, I tweeted out right after that interview with Joe Rogan. I mean, typical Canadian, guys. Come on.
Yeah.
How many times did he say "I'm sorry" in that interview? I mean,
I know.
That's what we would All we ever do as Canadians is apologize. I'm sorry. Yes, sir. So, George, you guys all look like proud Canadians apologizing for winning and then apologizing for swearing. So, Good on George for that. But with Joanna Jędrzejczyk, what does she do next? I don't think she gets that rematch.
No.
Despite many of us considering her the greatest woman to ever compete in mixed martial arts, she got destroyed. You don't get a rematch when you get destroyed. So the opportunity now to either A, have a fight in the division, one fight, emerge victorious, get your title back, or get a title shot again, or B, the 125-pound weight class is about to be introduced next month. So the women's flyweight division is going to be introduced next month. She's already been someone that's talked about, hey, you know what, I want to move up. I want that title as well. So the opportunity for her to compete in two different divisions is right there. In terms of what's next, it's whatever she wants. If the ego is in charge, she goes back and wins the title or tries to win the title against Rose Namajunas by winning one more fight. Or she doesn't want to do that, go up, win that 125-pound title, start defending that one there. So there's a lot of options for her right now, despite the fact that she's going to be dejected. She's depressed right now. That's natural. A lot of fighters go through that when they lose. That's just normal. So give her some time. She'll figure it out. She'll go back and realize, this is what I did wrong and stuff like that. I just think that, one thing that UFC 217 taught me, guys, is, every so often we get these events where a lot of fighters are served humble pie. Humility in martial arts is extreme. It's very, very important. And the three champions that were talking trash and really ripping into their opponents got lessons learned.
Hey, Joe, grazie mille. Thank you so much for this morning. Amazing job as always. We'll talk to you again real soon, my friend.
Thanks, guys. #Mint. Love it, guys.
Ci vediamo. There's Joe, our good friend. Showdown Joe doing a great job, as he always does. And once again, he joins us when we have a chance. And obviously that was an easy one, but he's right. Just George saying, I'm sorry for swearing. Even when he said, no, sometimes it takes balls. Sorry for the language. And balls is okay, considering Bisping came on and dropped about 10,000 F-bombs seconds later. Now,
bingo.
Roast Beef, you did see this, right? You saw that virtue of of one of those illegal computer sites, I think. Is that correct?
Yes.
You did not pay.
We streamed.
Yeah.
We streamed.
Well, that's what you call it, streaming.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Unreal.
People trying to make a living, and that is
kidding.
just. Yeah, but the great night. What do you think? 1 out of 10. What was UFC 217?
Yeah, this was actually the first time I've sat down and watched like a big profile UFC fight. I've watched the big boxing matches before, but first time I've sat down and watched a big UFC fight. And yeah, it was a 10 out of 10 for me.
Me too.
Okay. Got a question for Roast Beef over here
Yeah.
talking about Saturday night. What was more exciting, the GSP fight or Freddie Anderson allowing 6 more goals in against the St. Louis Blues earlier in the night?
Well, I knew that was coming.
It was rough. It's a rough night. But GSP won, so I kind of pushed pushed the other part to the back of my mind.
Now is Fred Anderson going to allow another 6 goals tonight against an expansion team because we have the Vegas Golden Knights in town?
I would hope not. But
he would hope not.
This defense and Freddie hasn't been playing well, so you never know.
Remember a while ago when we were talking about just stuff going on? Have you looked at the standings in the NHL, like the overall standings, and which Canadian teams are ahead of other Canadian teams? Do you want to maybe throw that up? And
we're still in the divisional spot. So
what position do you play on the team?
We're
they are still in a positional spot.
Yeah.
They're in 3rd place in the division. So
because if you look at it right now, the top Canadian teams in the NHL. Mike, it starts with a W. I don't know how many. W, yeah.
Well, I know before the game, Jameis Winston said that we got to go and eat ourselves some. Who wants some W's to eat?
Yeah.
Which I didn't get.
No, I didn't get it. So.
Well, Cam Newton. Okay, cool. If we're gonna go on the stupid train, can we just Cam Newton?
This is the really stupid train.
And I had to look at that twice. Apparently, he's a real history buff. Cam Newton says that okay, I want to get this right because I want to make sure that where to go. To the effect that we have to keep moving on, we have to keep going on, just like the Titanic.
That's right. Who, of course, a lot of people that aren't familiar with that, the Titanic went on and made itself across the ocean and carried passengers back and forth to North America for centuries. Yeah. So it's arguably one of the most successful cruise ships out there, and kind of paved the way for some of the super liners we see today. Is that what he was getting at?
Yeah, we just lost a great player, but nevertheless, the Titanic still has to go. Okay, well, on many levels, I don't get what that means, but I assume he just means that they're going to move on.
Hey, and shout out to the Carolina Panther media that have no balls to actually question him. Cam, you know the Titanic sunk on its maiden voyage, right?
No one wants to say anything.
No, they just shut up and
Well, there's Carolina. So they said, "Hey, I hear that. I wonder if you still get tickets to go on there. Wonder what the food's like. Probably wet now.
Yeah, very.
And not as fresh as it used to be.
No, not as fresh.
They should have played Celine Dion. We'd play Celine. Well, actually, we don't want to play Celine Dion because that just it hurts my head.
I still have nightmares of you saying to me.
Oh yeah, that's
at
right
the beginning of the show.
Yeah, but remember
when it first started.
Remember what the question was?
Making out with Celine Dion. I still hear.
Let's go back to that music because I think that if you're in Las Vegas and you're having drinks in one of those booths where you kind of can't see anybody.
Yeah.
And Celine was moved in really close. And saying something like how's it going? Like something like that.
Okay.
Would you?
She sounds like Kate Burness.
Would you make out with her?
No.
Oh, you're changing your mind. Don't you change it. How dare you, David Bastel? I don't want the nice David Bastel. I want DJ Styles. Of course you would. The answer was yes.
Ass roast beef.
Yeah, put that picture up there and do it. Yeah, all right. Celine Dion, yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah, of course the answer is yes. The answer is yes. Boy, that'd be nice seeing
that'd be great.
Roast beef and Celine Dion.
Throw the selfie too while it's happening.
Oh yeah.
And post.
Oh yeah.
Instagram post.
Yeah. My heart still goes on. As in hard on.
Oh. Hey, you know what? Speaking of that, we haven't talked to Bill Belichick in a while. Could we get him on sometime this week?
I think he could come on tomorrow.
Okay, because it was a bye week for the Patriots.
He should have better material. I think.
Sure. He's had all that chance to not only prep for the next game, but write some more jokes.
Oh, because they are. He's probably my favorite comedian right now. Well, Sebastian Maniscalco, Dave Attell, Bill Belichick.
Yeah, he's top three. I think it's fair to say he's top three.
Now, as I mentioned beforehand, being with our sponsors down in Mexico, Playa del Carmen.
Yes.
We were at the stunning Paradisus.
It looked fantastic, all those pictures you were tweeting out.
Which was amazing.
Oh.
And so I got to tell you, let's get some appropriate music here.
Yes, sir.
Oh, we had a good time. I bought my favorite tequila, by the way, down there. Clase Azul, it's called. Clase Azul.
Azul.
It's that ceramic bottle. It's white with blue on it. It has a silver. Very phallic looking. It's a little disturbing that way.
Did you get it at a good price?
It wasn't the greatest price.
No. Because sometimes
you can, but this was not.
You sometimes go down there and you get something like really, really cheap that's expensive, and then other times it's like there's no difference in price. You're supposed to have it cheaper.
Yeah, but this one's hard to get up here, and you do pay a lot of money because to me, and it's the kind of it's like what they call reposado. It's 100% blue agave. And so when it comes out, it's almost brownish color. It almost looks like one of your darker rums. It's almost the same color because it's añejo, so it's aged, and it is my favorite tequila.
And fun fact, tequila made there naturally and tequila that comes here, night and day comparison.
I can't, if it's
night
white,
and day.
I can't have Blanco. I can't drink the white gasoline anymore. Like in the old days, like, hey, everyone, let's do tequila. And everyone's like, yay. It's really not yay.
Hey, let's not.
It's not really yay.
No, it isn't.
But I got to know the DKI guys quite well. In fact, I think I have a clip right now of some of the fun that we had at Paradisus. If we can roll that clip, it's actually pretty awesome.
Please do.
I can't remember what night that was. That's I think that's Paul Burns. I think it's
Burnsy?
Yeah, it's not going well. Yeah.
Burnsy was in better shape than that.
Well, it's when they ran out of tequila. Thought he could have held himself a little better. Oh boy, that's oh boy, that's not. Oh. He wasn't going to the water aerobics, I can tell you that. Okay. Well, there you go. There's a little. There's a nice little wrap up of fun with DKI. Speaking of fun,
Yes, sir.
Do you think that Matt Duchene is feeling pretty good today?
I think he's feeling really good. But if you're an Ottawa Senators fan, you sit there and you go, "We gave up that much for Matt Duchene?
Yeah, you know
Oh
what?
my God, what are you doing?" Like last time I checked, Matt Duchene wasn't Connor McDavid. Yeah, Matt Duchene wasn't Sidney Crosby. But you look at it. Not only did they give up Kyle Turris to the Predators, and yeah, there was some talk that he may or may not sign. That's fine. You give up that. You give up 3 prospects, a first rounder, a third rounder, and a crappy third string goaltender. I mean, wow, did they ever just roll out the red card? Like if you're a Leaf fan today, and we got a smiling one in the corner, you're going, okay, Matt Duchene is a slight upgrade on Kyle Turris, in my opinion. Not a massive upgrade, a slight upgrade. And that's debatable too, by the way. But if you're giving away Turris in one direction, a first and third, 3 prospects, including a guy that played on the national team last year, I mean, what are you thinking? What are you thinking for a guy that didn't want to play in Colorado? A guy that wanted out badly. It's almost like the guy that sits there and demands to be traded, knows he's going to eventually be traded, and Joe Sakic still got a boatload of prospects for it.
If you're Joe Sakic,
it's like, oh, good
that
God,
was pretty good.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like they should have just annihilated the Avalanche in the trade, but they didn't. They were the ones that got annihilated. I don't get it. I mean,
and Nashville, look at that roster they have now, because I think they're pretty comfortable with the contracts they have.
Oh, sure.
It's going to be a good team for a while.
See, in Nashville gave up a little bit, but that's probably what Nashville gave up is probably what Ottawa should have gave up: a second-round draft pick, a prospect, and that's about it. And you still get a Kyle Turris back, who's probably going to play second-line minutes for a team that went to the Stanley Cup final last year. But man, Ottawa, what a stupid trade. Just makes no sense. And by the way, Matt Duchene's a free agent after next season. So what are you going to do? Pay him $10 million, you cheapskates? What a dumb move by the Ottawa Senators.
What do you think, Matt Duchene, Toronto Maple Leaf?
I think that'd be funny as hell.
Rusty.
Wouldn't hate it.
Yeah.
Also love that Turris is out, because it seems like he gets 10 points on us every time we play Ottawa. So
on us.
Yeah. Man.
It's habit.
You guys go into that dressing room and go, damn it, Turris.
Yeah.
Pull it together, guys.
Yeah.
Who's that guy in the corner? Why is he wearing a backpack?
Yeah, I like how you worked that in today, Russell. By the way, I really do. I'm a fan of the we and the us.
That's okay. We'll let it fly on this show.
Yeah, well,
But man, will we butcher anybody else that does
what doesn't fly on this show?
Everything.
I mean, seriously, what do we not have? Coming up, we have a bunch of guests. Some that are confirmed. We can talk about that, right?
Yeah, we can talk about that coming up in the next 2 weeks. So here's what it looks like in no particular order. A little bit later on this week, Hall of Fame defenseman Paul Coffey will be calling into the show.
Coffey, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, massive coup there. Tomorrow, Clark Judge will join us.
Clark
from
Judge,
the Talk
our
of
good
Fame
buddy.
Network.
Yes.
Next week, early in the week, some guy named Doug Gilmour is going to be on the show.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen.
Absolutely. We also have now we're confirming a date for it. Now it's coming out on Friday, but there's a documentary, a 30 for 30 on Ric Flair. We got the director of the actual 30 for 30 that's going to come on. That just debuted on ESPN last week. Canada gets it on Friday. It's supposed to be, and they're saying this, it's supposed to be the best 30 for 30 so far. And if you've watched one 30 for 30, you know how significantly
They're all good.
This could be. So watch for him. He's going to be coming up. Also, exactly. Also, I had a chance to talk with Scott Morrison of Sportsnet, who has a new book out.
Oh, good. Scotty. Yep.
He's going to actually make time to come down to the studio. I've invited him to come down to the studio, join us in studio, and he has accepted. We're just figuring out a date. Also, Murray Howe, the son of Gordie Howe.
That no one talks about.
Nobody talks about, but he may be the smartest of the Howes because he's a doctor.
Yeah.
So he wrote a book on Gordie and the the 9 tributes of what Gordy has kind of passed on to the family and what he learned by his father. It's a really touching book that goes from laughter to tears in a moment of pages. So Murray's going to be joining us on Thursday, and plus we have a couple more surprises, or as some bad radio hosts out there, and you know who they are, like to say, much, much more.
Much, much more.
What?
Yep. Big weeks.
Become best friends. Yep.
We did.
Well, Kelly Rudy as well. I forgot about our friend
Kelly
Kelly
Rudy.
Rudy. He's going to be coming on the show too. So, and he's not going to wear the headband.
No, we can talk about that though.
We'll make
I
fun
talked
of
to him about that before.
And that terrible Jofa helmet.
Yeah.
You have all those choices and you pick a Jofa helmet?
Yeah.
Come on, Rudy.
Someone said, you know it's pronounced Yofa. No, you know what? No one cares. It's in Canada. Hey, do you have a Yofa helmet? No. I have a Jofa helmet, though, loser.
Let's get ready to rumble.
Speaking of Let's Get Ready to Rumble, I'd like to thank Joe Ferraro, Showdown Joe, for joining us here this morning. Appreciate that, talking UFC 217. Make sure you join us tomorrow. And by the way, I believe a visit from Bill Belichick and his Comedy Corner. Remember, subscribe to RawMikeRichards.com and the YouTube channel. Yeah.